No one noticed the man when he arrived in Grayford, and that was not an accident. The bus hissed as it came to a stop, its brakes sighing like something relieved to be done with its duty. The door folded open, and the man stepped down onto the cracked pavement with a single worn duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Dawn hovered uncertainly in the sky, the light thin and gray, as if the day itself hadn't decided whether to begin. Grayford slept. It was the kind of town that existed quietly, without ambition. Too close to the city to be forgotten entirely, too small to matter. A place where people stayed because leaving required effort, and arriving required very little explanation. The man stood still for a moment, letting the bus pull away and the sound of it disappear down the road. He took in the buildings, brick worn smooth by decades of weather, storefronts with hand-painted signs, windows dark and uncurious. He inhaled slowly. If anyone had asked his name, he would have said Daniel. That name fit this place. Simple. Forgettable. It was not his real name. In another world, one of glass towers and guarded entrances, his real name carried a weight that bent conversations around it. It appeared in business journals, whispered through investment circles, printed beside numbers so large they felt fictional. His wealth was not inherited quietly or earned slowly. It had exploded into existence, fast and public, and from the moment it did, his life ceased to belong entirely to him. Money changed the way people looked at you, listened to you, loved you. Daniel had learned that lesson too young and too thoroughly. He walked into Grayford with no car, no credit cards, no assistants waiting for instructions. The phone in his pocket was powered off, a small, expensive rectangle holding a world he had chosen to step away from. He had memorized the number of the woman who owned the bakery before he arrived. She rented rooms. She didn't ask questions. "You'll want the one above the ovens," she told him when he showed up at her door. Warm in winter, loud in the morning. "That's fine," Daniel said. She handed him the key without ceremony. "Rent's due Fridays. Miss it once, we talk. Miss it twice, you leave." "Understood." She looked at him then, really looked, and nodded, as if he passed some test he hadn't known he was taking. The room was small, narrow bed, a single chair, a window that looked out over the alley. It smelled faintly of yeast and sugar. Daniel dropped his duffel on the floor and sat on the bed, letting the silence press in. He felt lighter than he had in years. By the end of the week, he had found work hauling lumber and mixing cement on a construction site at the edge of town. The foreman asked few questions. Daniel's hands blistered quickly, then hardened. His muscles ached in ways that felt honest. When he collapsed into bed at night, his thoughts quieted. This was the point. He didn't want admiration. He didn't want awe. He wanted to know what remained when he had nothing to offer but himself. He watched people closely. Not like a predator, but like a student. How men treated each other when no one was watching. How women laughed without checking who might overhear. How kindness appeared unannounced and without leverage. It was raining the day he walked into the cafe. The rain was steady and cold, the kind that soaked through your coat and into your mood. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly when he entered, and warmth enveloped him. Heat, coffee, cinnamon. "Rough day?" a woman asked from behind the counter. Daniel looked up. She had her sleeves rolled past her elbows, hair pulled back loosely, strands escaping around her face. Her eyes were alert, intelligent, missing nothing. She slid a towel across the counter toward him before he could ask. "You look like you lost," she added, not unkindly. "Only temporarily," he said. She smiled, quick, genuine, unguarded, and poured him a cup of coffee without asking how he took it. Her name was Elena. She didn't interrogate him, didn't flirt in the practiced way he recognized instantly. She treated him like someone who existed, not someone who might be useful. When he paid, she gave him exact change and moved on. Daniel left unsettled. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Sometimes they talked about nothing. The weather, the stubbornness of old buildings, the way rain made Grayford feel smaller. Sometimes they sat in silence, comfortable in the absence of performance. Elena listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, it was carefully, as if words were a currency she didn't spend recklessly. But there were things she never said. She never mentioned family, never spoke of where she came from, or why she stayed. Sometimes Daniel caught her watching the door, her posture subtly tense, like someone braced for interruption. Once, a man raised his voice at another customer. The cafe stilled. Elena didn't raise her. She said one sentence, low, precise, and the man left without argument, his face drained of color. Daniel noticed. Another evening, he saw her across town stepping out of a black car that didn't belong in Grayford. When she noticed him watching, something closed in her expression. "Friend?" he asked later. "Something like that," she replied. "Something dangerous?" She smiled faintly. "Only if you stay too curious." He understood the warning. The man appeared a week later. He didn't belong. His clothes were expensive without being flashy. His presence carried authority that didn't need volume. He addressed Elena by name, and she went very still. "I told you not to come here," she said. "This won't take long," the man replied, his gaze flicking dismissively to Daniel. Elena asked Daniel to leave. Outside, rain fell again, heavier this time. Minutes stretched. When Elena emerged, her voice shook. "You need to go," she said. "Now." That night, she didn't come home. Daniel found her phone behind the cafe, screen cracked, rainwater pooling around it. Fear settled cold and sharp in his chest. He stood in the alley, soaked, and pulled out his own phone. One call would expose everything. He made it anyway. The response was immediate, too immediate to mistake. By dawn, Elena was safe. By daylight, Daniel stood at the edge of the life he had tried to abandon. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "Who are you?" she asked. "I didn't want this," he said, "but I couldn't let them hurt you." She walked away without another word. 3 days passed. The cafe stayed dark. Daniel stayed in Grayford. On the 4th night, Elena knocked on his door. "I know who you are," she said calmly. "I figured it out." He didn't deny it. "I was hiding," she said. "From people who thought they owned me. From a future I didn't choose." "So was I," he said. "From a world where love always came with conditions." She placed his phone on the table. "You chose me," she said. "That matters." "I would again." She studied him, searching, measuring, deciding. "I don't want your money," she said. "I want the man who worked until his hands bled, the man who listened, the man who showed up." "I can be him," Daniel said, "with nothing. Or with everything, but always honestly." Elena took his hand. Outside, Grayford slept on, unaware that the richest man it would ever host had found the one thing he could never buy. And for the first time in his life, Daniel knew who he was. Not a billionaire, not a lie, but a man finally seen for what remained when everything else was stripped away.